Today I'm sharing my September reading wrap-up as well as a few favorite things. Hey there, it's Mitzi. Welcome to my channel. Today I just wanted to talk about what I've been reading during the last couple of weeks of September. Now I have already posted a couple of weekly updates during the month of September, so I won't talk about those things, but I have read a few things over the last week that I wanted to talk about, as well as just kind of sum up the month of reading. For September, I did read a lot of books. I looked at my Goodreads. I'm trying to keep up with my Goodreads, and I've been doing a pretty good job this year of doing that. But I noticed that I had read 39 books in September, and I know that seems like a lot, but I participated in the 30 books for 30 days challenge, and in that challenge I decided I would just read picture books for that because there was no way I was going to read 30 longer books, so I used picture books for that. So most of the books that I read out of those 39 books were picture books or middle grade books, and those of course don't take me as long to read. I did participate in the series September as well, and I did, I think, a great job with that because I ended up reading 10 books that pertain to some sort of series. So that means that out of all these books on my shelf, all of these series that I've either started or wanted to start, I ended up reading 10 from my bookshelves that needed to be read. So I was excited to get those things done as well. So I participated in the 30 books for 30 days, the series September. Of course, I am participating in the More Montgomery Challenge because I'm a host of that one. And I read several books for that. I read a standalone, Kilmeny of the Orchard. I read the last Anne book, and that also worked for one of the prompts on series September. And then I read several picture books that were retellings or anything Anne related, that prompt. I read several picture books for that, as well as a picture book that was a nonfiction. So technically I could use that for the nonfiction prompt. And I rewatched a favorite. I rewatched I think it was for the 1980s, the Anne of Green Gables. It was like a little mini series. I think it's the most popular Anne of Green Gables, and I rewatched that. So I don't have that many more prompts to go. I plan on reading a short story collection this month, and I'm sure that I will pick up some kind of Anne adaptation to watch or a non-Anne adaptation. If you have some ideas for watching a non-Anne or an Anne adaptation that I haven't talked about, let me know in the comments because I'm looking for something to fulfill those prompts. But again, the More Montgomery Challenge is for September, October, and November. So I still have October and November to fulfill those prompts. So I'm well on my way with that. So I hope that you are participating in that too. What was the other one? More Montgomery series September. Oh, the Fall Into Reading Challenge. Now for the Fall Into Reading Challenge, I am actually going to try to fill in 2 boards for that. So I filled in one board for the Fall Into Reading with just picture books, and now I'm working on another board for the Fall Into Reading Challenge with novels. And I'm well on my way with that too because that one is also September, October, and November. So I'm well on my way of completing all the prompts on that one as well. So it's been a great September. Oh, and I also participated in Shake-Timber, and I read A Midsummer Night's Dream. So I have really been reading lots of books. Now, for the books that I read this past week, and I really am excited to share these because they were great books. I finished Listen for the Whisperer by Phyllis Whitney. This is, it's considered romantic suspense, but there's not much romance in it, which is fine with me because I don't read a lot of romance. But Phyllis Whitney is known for romantic suspense, and there is a touch of romance in here. I really enjoyed this one. This one was published in 1972, and I talked about this one in my birthday video in May because I turned 50 in May, and so did this book. So I talked about several books that were turning 50 this year, celebrating their 50th birthday this year along with me. So I had picked this up a while ago and hadn't read it yet. And I was interested in reading, and I thought that cover looked kind of gothic and suspenseful, so I thought I would pick it up right now because I've been in the mood for gothic suspense kind of books, and this was perfect for that. It's about a young girl. She's probably in her early 20s. Her father dies, and she has never known her mother, but her mother was an actress back in the day, and something mysterious had happened. There was this murder on the set of the movie that her mother was making at the time. When that happened, her mother just stopped acting and moved away. I think she was living in Hollywood, and she moved, I think, to Norway, and no one had seen her since. So the daughter has never met her mother. She was being raised by her father and a stepmother. And so when her father dies, he wants her to meet, that one of his wishes is for her to go meet her mother. She decides to go to Norway because she is a journalist and she is super interested in old movies and old movie stars. So she's going to do an article on her mother, and she ends up staying in the house with her mother. One of the things that was suspenseful about this was that the mother had been hearing this person whispering like a ghost in the dark at night. So when the girl, her daughter, stays in the house, she hears it too. So there's this kind of, is it a ghost sort of thing in the backdrop of this, and is it connected with this murder that happened many years ago? So that's what goes on in the story. I found it to be super interesting and a page turner. Now, it is dated. It is 1972, and you can tell that. It's over dramatic, but it worked well for this story. The only issue I had with this one was the mother-daughter relationship was just plain weird in the story. Just the way that they responded to one another was weird. And even how at the end when they're supposedly reconciling, that's not a spoiler because that's not what the story's really about. It was weird. It was weird too. Other than that though, I did enjoy it and I thought it was a great one for this time of year for gothic suspense if you're interested in that kind of book. And it was one that I was invested in from the beginning and wanted to know what was going on, who had committed this murder, and who was whispering in the darkness. So I found it to be a fun read for this week. And Phyllis Whitney is a great writer if you're interested in books from the 60s and 70s that are gothic, kind of like Daphne du Maurier books. She's a great one to try. So I do plan on reading more by Phyllis Whitney. And then I read the next one in the series of Unfortunate Events for series September. One of the prompts was a throwback, and I decided to go back and read the first book in a series of Unfortunate Events. And I realized how much I enjoyed that, so I decided I would just continue. So I'm going to gradually make my way through a series of Unfortunate Events. I've already read A Bad Beginning, and this was a reread as well. The Reptile Room I had read before, but now from the rest on, I have never read. This was even better than I remembered. It was a 5-star. It's my favorite so far. Now again, I've only read 2, but I really enjoyed the main character in the story. Well, the Baudelaire children are the main characters, but the person that they are now adopted by is Montgomery, and Uncle Monty's what they call him. And he is a super interesting character. He is a lovable character that I really enjoyed in this one. So I'm excited about continuing this series because this was a 5-star, as well as the first one was a 5-star for me as well. It has all that dark gothic feel that I love in stories, but of course it's middle grade, so it's not scary at all. But it is in fact a series of unfortunate events, and I love how the Baudelaire children, who are the children in the story, I love how they work together and they don't give up. Even though the adults around them are all just stupid. I mean, they are. They're just dumb people. Even though the other adults aren't helping them, they figure out a way. They don't give up. They figure out a way to get out of some grim circumstances, and I really enjoy that about this series. So I will continue that just gradually as I can get to it. And then finally, the book that I finished that was a favorite read was Agatha Christie's By the Pricking of My Thumbs. I loved this book. It was fantastic. I had watched a video, Janelle at Too Fond of Books, she had posted a video of Agatha Christie reads for the autumn season. And I was super interested in that. So I went through and I looked at all the ones that she recommended. And I think this was the last one on her list. But when she advertised this book, she gave just a little bit of the premise of this book. I knew I had to read this one. And I'm so glad I did. It is perfect for the autumn season. But this one is a Tommy and Tuppence, and I've never read any Tommy and Tuppence, so I didn't know how I would get on with it. I think this is number 4. I think that's what Goodreads said, that it was the number 4 for the Tommy and Tuppence series. And I am in love with Tommy and Tuppence, and I want to read all of them. I think I'm going to go ahead and just read all the Tommy and Tuppence next. But in this one, apparently they're older than they are in the others, and it is the 4th one. And I looked at the publication of By the Pricking of My Thumbs, and it was, I think it said 1968. Anyway, in this one, Tommy's aunt is in this nursing home, and so he goes to visit his aunt and check on her. And while they're there, Tuppence is sitting in sort of this waiting area with this older lady. She meets this nice little old lady, and they carry on a conversation. Well, while they're sitting there, the woman looks over at Tuppence and says, she looks at the fireplace. Tuppence is looking over at the fireplace, and the woman notices that she's looking into the fireplace. And she looks at Tuppence and says, "Is it your child?" And she's kind of, Tuppence is like, okay, what is this woman talking about? So she tries to, make rhyme or reason out of what in the world the woman is saying. And they leave, and Tuppence has this in her mind. She's like, what in the world was this woman talking about with my child in the fireplace? So she keeps thinking about that, and she goes on this investigation, and it goes from there. There is a whole lot more that happens in the story besides that. But the lady's name was Mrs. Lancaster. That was her name. And you find out what Miss Lancaster is talking about later on in the story. And it's creepy. And I loved it. It was perfect. It was the perfect read for the fall season for me, because I do like those kind of books at this time of year. So this was wonderful. And I love Tuppence. I think Tuppence is a fantastic character, and I can't wait to read more about Tuppence. She's smart, but she's curious, and it gets her into some dangerous situations, which makes it really interesting. I will say, though, that when I was going to post this on my Goodreads, I noticed that I think it said 3.7 or something was the average rating for this book. And it was a 5-star for me. So I was like, why in the world didn't people enjoy this? So I was looking at a couple of comments, and I saw one that kind of stuck out at me. It said they didn't like this one as much because of the boring dialogue with the conversations with the other people in the village. Well, that to me made the story even more interesting. I loved whenever Tuppence visits the village to find out what's going on with this particular house in the story. She meets this lady who she's a character. She is like the nosy neighbor. She talks 90 to nothing, and her husband can't get a word in, but she knows a little bit about everything, and it's kind of, you're not sure if, this is just gossip or if she knows what she's talking about. So to me, it was super entertaining, and I loved that. But I do like quirky characters, and I like it whenever there's a small town or village where all the people are gossiping and you find out things that way. So for me, I found it to be wonderful. It was all the elements of a great story were in this one. Just enough creepiness, just enough mystery of the people around you that you suspect everyone. There's a couple of neighbors who you're like, okay, that's weird. Why did they act that way? Why did they respond that way? There's a lot of that in this one. And on top of that, you have Tuppence trying to figure out what's going on. And she is clever and not afraid to get in there and dig deeper. So I really enjoyed this one. Thank you to Janelle for recommending it, because it was a favorite read. Definitely 5 stars, and I can't wait to read more Tommy and Tuppence. This was fantastic. So that was the last book I read for September, and it was a wonderful month for reading for me. I read several 5-star reads. I read The Silent Companions was a 5-star. The Giver, By the Pricking of My Thumbs, The Series of Unfortunate Events, both 1 and 2 were 5 stars for me. And then I also wanted to talk about a couple of favorite new picture books. Now, I mentioned earlier that I was reading picture books for the 30 books in 30 days. So thank you to all of your comments, because I would have never discovered these 2 wonderful picture books. The first one of you mentioned in a comment was Mr. Putter and Tabby Pick the Pears by Cynthia Rylant. I have never read this one. I've read some of the Mr. Putter and Tabby, because I remember my students, when I taught school, would pick these up from the library and we would read them in class. But I'd never read this one, and it is so adorable. It is just precious. And I love Cynthia Rylant. I've read several of hers, but again, not this series. But in this particular one, and by the way, the pictures, illustrated by Arthur Howard, the pictures are precious as well. There is this sweet little picture of Mr. Putter, and he's thinking about pear jelly. He has a tree full of pears, and they're ready to be picked, and he wants to make pear jelly, which reminded me of my childhood immediately. So maybe that had a lot to do with the warm and fuzzies from this book, because we had a pear tree in the backyard, and I remember Mama, you know, she would make pear jelly out of the pears. But anyway, he is older. So when he goes to climb the tree, he puts a ladder up and he's going to climb up in the tree to pick the pears. His joints just, you know, he's got old bones and creaky joints, and it just doesn't work out for him. So he decides to come up with another way to get the pears out of the tree. He uses a slingshot. He thinks about a slingshot from his childhood. Well, once he makes the slingshot, it just takes him back to his childhood, and he plays with the slingshot all day. So by the end of the day, he doesn't have the pears for the pear jelly, and he's a little disappointed and embarrassed in himself that he's wasted the day playing with his slingshot. But then there is a surprise the next morning because of playing with the slingshot. I won't tell you anymore because I do want you to pick this up. But because he played with the slingshot all day, there's a surprise the next morning. And the ending was super cute. So this is just a precious read. Thank you to the commenter who mentioned this one, because I loved it. It was a favorite book. And now I went online and I looked on my library website, and I've placed a hold on a couple of more of these Mr. Putter and Tabby, because I'm in love. I'm in love with these. So thank you for pointing that out. And I do like Cynthia Rylant. So I think I'm going to try to pull some of my old Cynthia Rylant out and read those too. And then the other favorite picture book was The Scarecrow by Beth Ferry and the Fan Brothers. Now, I have seen this book just like I've seen the Mr. Putter and Tabby books before. I had seen this book many times, and I've never picked it up. And I do like Scarecrow books. I have several Scarecrow books here, but this is a totally different perspective of a Scarecrow, and it is a favorite, not just picture book, but all-time favorite book in general. And I now want my own copy of this. But in this little story, so thank you for commenting and suggesting this one, because it's perfect. In this picture, you notice he is alone in the field, all by himself. And you start feeling a little sorry for this Scarecrow. And it goes through the winter, and he's there by himself doing his job. And then there is a crow, this baby crow, that drops out midair in front of this Scarecrow. So the Scarecrow picks up the the sweet little baby crow, and the story goes from there. And it's about their relationship and the changes that happen to this sweet little scarecrow. And I've read a lot of scarecrow books in the past that were creepy, and you know, it's a scarecrow, and you can see that as a creepy thing. I remember as a child watching this. It was one of those weekend scary movies, and it was about a scarecrow, and that's the image I have in my mind, like the scarecrow guy on Batman, you know, that kind of creepy thing. So this is the opposite of that. This is all warm, fuzzy, sweet feelings for the scarecrow, and he's my favorite scarecrow for sure. I love this book. Thank you for telling me about it. I highly recommend stop by your library and see if they have this picture book, because it's precious and it is the perfect time of year to read it. So I hope that you will do that. So then I had some favorites I wanted to mention too for the month of September, just some other things that are bookish related. One thing was I received a special surprise in the mail, so I wanted to mention that first. Thank you to Katie from Paperbacks and Ponytails. She sent me the cutest, I mean, this thing is adorable. It is an Anne of Green Gables lined journal. I love pen and paper, I love journals, and of course I love Anne of Green Gables. And look at how beautiful that is. If you look close, you'll see the text of Anne of Green Gables, and it wraps around that way. It is the text all the way around, and it's gorgeous. And then of course in the middle is a quote from Lucy Maud Montgomery, and then it's sprayed with this beautiful green. I mean, I love the combination of the blue and green. It's gorgeous. And then the end papers too. Look at the end papers. I mean, isn't that just beautiful? So thank you to Katie for sending this to me. It was perfect timing too, because not only did I finish the Anne of Green Gables series in September, but the week that I received this was in fact my BookTube anniversary, my first year on BookTube. So it was perfect timing for that. So thank you to Katie. If you have not visited Katie's channel, please go over and visit. I'll leave a link in the description box. She reviews lots of great books, and I read a lot of the same books as Katie, so if you like the books I read, you'll be interested in hers. But she's also creative and artistic. She journals. She's just super creative. So if you like to watch people, you know, share their creativity, definitely go over and check out her channel, as well as her parents. I must say, I enjoy when her parents pop in and out of the videos. Sometimes they'll go on trips and things, and her parents will just kind of pop their heads into the video, and it is just precious. I love their family dynamic. It's just encouraging and makes me happy to watch. So be sure to check out Katie's channel, and thank you, Katie, for sending me this wonderful surprise. I'll definitely be using this one soon. And then also for my BookTube anniversary, I don't think I've mentioned this yet, but this is definitely a favorite. My son gave me, to celebrate 1 year, the James Stewart collection of 4 movies of James Stewart, and that is Harvey, Winchester 73, The Glenn Miller Story, and You Gotta Stay Happy. And we watched Harvey recently and I loved it, but I haven't seen any of these others. So if you've watched any, let me know in the comments which one I should watch next. Now, we did watch Anatomy of a Murder last week, and it was really a great movie. It is a drama for sure. It's a murder mystery, and there's a court case. In that one, though, it's, you know, it's a lot more serious, and it involves a rape, and there's a lot of, you know, of course it's a murder case, so it's a lot more serious. So just know that going into it. But again, it's Jimmy Stewart, so it was great because he is just the best actor in the world. I just love his movies, and I'm really enjoying watching those with my boys. So that was something else that was a favorite this month. So those are some of my September favorite reads and favorite things. What have you been reading? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.